It is only fair that each state receive fair representation in our new nation's government. However, our government must be accountable to the people it serves. So thus, we must have officials elected by the people representing each state. However, slaves must also receive representation as full men as well, and thus, states with slaves must receive extra representation to go along with the representation of free men. These slaves are a vital part of our state's and nation's economy, and thus without proper representation in the government, it will be too easy for other states to pass legislation against slavery and the economical merits of the institution. We are responsible for their well-being, and therefore they must have representation so that we can better accommodate them and suit their best interests. They live and work on the land. However, they deserve a representation in the government because they take up our resources and are a significant and essential part of the economy as a country as a whole. So to deny them representation would be disastrous to the welfare of our nation's economy and how we are able to produce goods, to the laws and regulations that we could have established in these slaves were given representation in the government. We are all different states with different economies, and therefore need a government that gives states enough power so that certain states do not get undermined by grouping laws that would favor a small group of other states. For North Carolina, specifically, we stress that our large population of the state, including slaves, deserves more representation than smaller states, and that our state itself should retain much power to govern itself. Much like the Anti-Federalist belief is that it is held by several representatives at this convention here today.
We will elect the executive power, meaning the President of the United States of America, through a vote of the representatives of the people. The people can directly elect the representatives of their states, and states with bigger populations, such as North Carolina, including slave populations who must be accounted for. We will have more representatives to be elected. Then, these representatives of the people in the states will be able to directly vote for the president, for these representatives will almost be assured of a high status in society, and education will be well versed on the needs of our country, unlike the laymen of the states. Thus, the needs of our country in the executive branch will be justly met by these educated men who represent the people in the states who will elect our executive power. The electoral college system would disproportionately represent smaller states and smaller population centers' interests, and thus our system is better suited to the needs of our country. As one union, we are people equally deserving of representation, and therefore our habitation in each state should represent the population of said state. With this system in place, competing factions cannot gain too much power over another. Competing factions are necessary to protect the interests of minority groups, such as slaves, but they should not be so overinflated as to disproportionately represent these smaller minorities, and therefore undermine the needs and desires of larger states and larger population centers, such as North Carolina.
There is no denying the pivotal role that slaves play in the Southern economy. North Carolina is no exception either, and we advocate firmly for the right to continue to use slavery as an economic institution that promotes our nation's economy as a whole. As such, we cannot have our property run away to the north and be harbored by these states. The slaves are the property of these men in the South, and the slaves cannot be allowed to escape this way. They are vital to our Southern economy and in turn to the Northern economy because they are our main workforce that allows us to be a viable national economic player. Our plan is to have fugitive slaves returned to their owners, and this return will be incentivized monetarily for Northerners. It is in the best interest for all states to return slaves to their rightful owners. Though North Carolina does definitely want to maintain both the slave trade and the institution of slavery, since both are vital supporting stones in our state and national economy, we are willing to compromise on the issue in the spirit of solidarity and unity with our fellow Americans. We propose putting an end to the international slave trade that brings slaves into America, while maintaining the institution of slavery in the southern states. We and all men clearly see the cruel conditions that the slaves are subject to on their voyage here to the United States. This voyage and the life they live while with the slave traders sharply contrasts the life the slaves are able to live with their masters in the States. We feed, clothe, and shelter them, providing all their basic necessities in life and providing their livelihood. how long would they be able to last on their own in this country? Probably not very long. We are helping and sheltering them like parents, and moreover, the slaves are a vital part to our economy, as we previously stated. Also, we are a large nation with many individual states. Each of these states has different needs, both politically and economically. Thus, we cannot allow our federal government to have legislation that is like a blanket that encloses all states and that could be harmful to the welfare of some states, such as this dilemma regarding slaves in North Carolina. The federal government should not govern the institution of slavery in the states. It should be up to the states to decide upon this practice and its necessity to its economy. As a nation, slavery is dividing the North and the South, and tension is building. We can resolve this dilemma by granting southern states the right to own slaves, but doing away with the international slave trade.
Reporting out of North Carolina with the best British accent, Nick Rudonovich. The man with the sexy sweater, Alex Genghis Khan. Reporting third out of North Carolina, the tennis stud, Michael Carmardian.